Hello and welcome to the How to Rapidly Customize and Deploy the Return to Office app webinar. Today we're going to be talking about the Return to Office app from Fliplet. And your speakers today are myself, Brett Johnson. I do customer success in North America for Fliplet, and my colleague Joe, who does customer success for the UK and EU. So our agenda for the webinar today, we'll have a brief introduction, and for those of you who may not be familiar, I will discuss what Fliplet is and how we can provide apps such as this Return to Office app. We'll go into details about why we're building an app for the Return to Office and the purposes behind that. Then we'll discuss some of the key features and the benefits of having this in an app, and I will walk through a live demo of a typical user's experience in the app. Then Joe will take over and she will talk about specifically how you can get set up with the template. Now the template is not live yet, but it should be live in a couple of days. And again, she'll go through a live demo in studio to show you how to load the data, how to customize the app to make the template work for you. And then lastly, we'll do some Q&A. Please just type questions in the Zoom chat. Thanks. So again, a brief introduction for those who may not be familiar with our company Fliplet and what we do. So Fliplet builds prefab apps, and we like to use the word prefab app because almost 90% of the app is built for you. Especially with this Return to Office app, we've designed it to be very broad so that you can very easily implement what you need to for each of your offices as you return to work. Now, again, most of the app is pre-built and you don't need to know any coding to build the app or modify the app. However, if you do want some advanced features or you want to take just more control of your app, if you know HTML, CSS, or JavaScript, you can customize the app further. So the purpose of the Return to Office app. Basically, we started to get a lot of feedback from clients who were trying to figure out in the wake of COVID-19 how they would start to get back to the office and what that may look like, how to implement social distancing and other features. So you can see here we have some quotes from clients. Again, a lot of feedback. So we decided to build an app plan and sent that out and got further feedback from clients. About 2 weeks ago, we had that webinar where Ian discussed some of the features. Even since then, we've gotten more client feedback to alter it. And again, hopefully everything will be ready very soon. But this was really based off of our clients' need in trying to understand how to implement a return to office. We know some people still may be figuring this out, so we hope the app can kind of help provide a framework for that. And what will the app deliver? So it will play a critical role in enforcing duty of care for staff. The biggest thing we want and we hope to help you achieve is making sure that your employees feel comfortable actually returning to the office and knowing that you're doing everything you can to help make them feel safe. We wanted to make it very easy to decentralize the office management and office rules. We fully appreciate some people may have multiple offices across multiple states, regions, countries, and the rules are going to be potentially very different for how you can return back to work and what rules you need to impose. You can divide the offices into spaces. We've kept this very broad. Spaces can be floors, can be wings, can be specific desks even, to allow people to book them ahead of time and check in and out as they come in. And also you'll be able to get reports. The office managers will be able to see if spaces are over capacity and to impose that social distancing. We wanted to reduce the technical complexity, especially for users, to make it very easy to use. We have a QR scanning system. So as they enter the building or as they enter the floor or maybe even on their desk, you just have a QR code. They scan it with the app and it checks them in or checks them out. And then lastly, We do have some data collection, potentially some health status. You can remove that if you don't want to use it, but we wanted to make it very clear. There's a terms and conditions at the start of the app about what data is collected and how privacy is managed. All right, so specifically some key features and benefits of the Return to Office app. Again, we wanted to have a space for you to provide just content and information about how your organization is managing the return to office. We wanted to be able to manage, monitor, and share staff status. Now that is each week we've built it so that a staff member should be kind of updating their status for where they're going to be working, and also potentially any health concerns, so that if someone was in the office last week and they've started to show symptoms, an office manager may be able to find who else was in that same area of the office and ask them to self-isolate. We can also want to allow users to report issues. This could be someone showing symptoms, or it could be something as simple as, soap wasn't refilled in one of the bathrooms. So they can report that on a specific space. And then lastly, this probably won't be ready this week. This is something we're still looking at adding, but ordering food, we realize you may not want a lot of people in your canteen or restaurant or cafeteria area because of social distancing. So we wanted to have kind of a catering role where someone in the app could receive orders from users and then either deliver it to their desk or just notify the user when it is ready, and they can just go and pick it up from the canteen instead of sitting around and waiting for it. So we also have just organizational management. Again, guidance and information specific to COVID-19. We have some general rules about maintaining social distancing and washing your hands, and all of that stuff we're kind of used to at this point, but it's a helpful reminder in the app. The office status and directory, again, COVID specific. Which offices are open? What is their status? Are they at full capacity? Are they at 25% capacity? You can update all of that, as well as details about each individual person. They can, again, notify in the directory what their status is. Are they going to be working from the office? News feed, so you can publish news and again, make it specific to offices. Users will be able to get notifications for news alerts for their office, and they'll also be able to share any news on social media. And notifications throughout the app can come in several forms. We have email, SMS, and push, which are all based off of user preferences. We also have in-app notifications, which won't alert the user unless they actually look in the app, but that's a nice way to keep a log or a history of the notifications. We have a public forum, or we've kind of formatted it around frequently asked questions, so that users can post questions and other users can potentially comment and have kind of a back and forth. It'll also allow people to search for any existing questions if their question has already been asked. And then lastly, as I mentioned, we're still working on, but we hope to have users able to order food, and then caterers can kind of see that and let them know when it's ready, or potentially deliver it to their office or desk area. So the staff status is the other really important part. As I mentioned previously, each week the user is intended to update where they're going to be working, and also if they've had any symptoms. So they report on that health status, and that only goes to the office managers. And again, if you choose you don't want to gather that information, it's very easy to remove it from the app. Users will check in and out of those office spaces. Again, the space is broadly defined. It could be the whole office, it could be a floor, it could be each individual desk, and they'll just check in and out with those QR codes. They can also make requests for spaces ahead of time. This is again by office to implement social distancing. If they need to have a meeting room or a conference room, they'll be able to book that ahead of time. And there will be a workflow for the approvals process. So by default, we have it so that as long as there is capacity in a space, the user will be approved. That just reduces the workload for an office manager. However, if they are over capacity, it will put the user in a wait list, and the office manager will need to go in and potentially decline some people and allow others. The people directory, so users will be able to search through the directory of people in their office and see their working status. So if I work next to Joe, for example, I'll be able to see that she's coming in on Monday and Tuesday. I won't go into the office that day. I'll go in on maybe Thursday. And lastly, data capture. So most of this data will be captured in data sources so that you can report on it. We know different regions and jurisdictions have some reporting requirements. So again, two things I wanted to specifically highlight. Reporting an issue. Again, we broadly have a few examples of what types of issues you report, but they are always specific to an office and typically specific to a space. And again, notifications will be sent through email, SMS, or push to the office managers, kind of the correct people. And the canteen and restaurant is largely going to be about just ordering food. So you'll be able to maintain a list of food and users will be able to order that. And again, notifications will be sent out to the people managing the food, and then it will be sent to the individual when their order is ready. So lastly, I just wanted to talk about some of the benefits of the Return to Office app before I get into the live demo. So you can manage different country, state, and region requirements. We realize that's going to be different for your different offices. Easy management of social distancing rules and regulations. You'll be able to set different capacity levels, and you'll be able to see if you're going over that capacity. So if you want your office to be at 50 people instead of 200, you can limit that. Staff can see, again, that the organization is ensuring their safety. This also can include visitors. So people don't necessarily need to download the app. They'll be able to see the QR codes posted up, and office managers will be able to check them in and out, again, ensuring that social distancing. You'll be able to quickly understand where staff are and their work status. So again, the work status is meant to be public for everyone, but the office managers can also see very specifically which spaces people are in and things like that. There will be an in-app interface for the office managers to approve or decline different requests. Again, this is all meant to be very simple for people to use. You don't have to train them on Fliplet Studio. It's going to be done in the app. You can merge this app with an existing app. We realize a lot of our clients may already have an internal comms or a directory app. You can take bits and pieces, take a couple screens from this app and put that into your existing app. And again, it's widely going to be available wherever staff are. You'll have a mobile app. You'll also have a web app as well, so they can access it on their desktop computers. So let's go ahead and jump into the live demo. Okay, so we're in Fliplet Studio here, and we have our template loaded up. And I'm just going to walk you through the screens and some of the features. And typically, I'm going to focus on the average user, and then we will go over to Jo, and she'll talk about the office manager and kind of admin features. So we have an onboarding screen, as we do for most of our apps. This is only shown to users the first time they access the app, and it's going to walk them through what the app is about very simply. So we're returning to the office. You can book a desk. You can check the status of your colleagues. You can check in and out. And it's all about keeping you safe. So once you hit get started, we do have kind of a terms and conditions here that you can of course modify, but basically a user has to accept this to be able to continue into the app. So I've understood it, I accept. And then we have login. Now we have here a data source based email and password, which many of you may be familiar with. We also have the option for SSO. So if you want to use that instead, you can just kind of swap out these screens. And off of the login, we also do have registration. So if you don't want to pre-fill your users, you can allow them to register. They'll fill in their email, their password, and their name. And the rest of this information is optional. They will need to have a default office. A default space is optional, but this will just kind of pre-fill the information for them when they go to book things. And then lastly, they'll be able to set their notification preferences for in-app push notifications, email, and SMS. Okay, So let me go ahead and log in here really quick, make sure I get access to all the features. Okay. So when they log in, they will be taken to a menu screen. And I should mention that if someone is on a mobile device and they try to log into the web-based app, they will be shown a mobile installation instructions. We think it's important for them to use the native app, so you can add in instructions for or links to the iOS and the Android apps, so they can download those and continue there. And from the menu screen, you'll have a list of options across the top, and these are kind of the primary things we think people will use, and then the rest down the bottom. So update status. Basically every week the user should be updating their status for the upcoming week. We have some information here, kind of notifying people if you're experiencing symptoms, please, don't come to the office. And we just kind of have a simple list here of the symptoms. And we are, of course, updating for this week. So I can update that, Monday was a holiday. I wasn't going to be working. Today I'm working from home. And tomorrow and Thursday I'll go to the office. And Friday I'm going to take the day off. So you can have these different statuses. And again, those are public by default. This information is not shown to other users, but will be shown to office managers if you've been experiencing any symptoms or anyone around you has been experiencing symptoms. And that way the office manager can potentially notify someone, hey, maybe you shouldn't come in. But a user will submit that and that will update their status. And then when they come into the office, they'll be able to check in and out, again, depending on how you have your spaces set up. That could be different floors or their specific desk or a variety of things. So that'll open their camera. That's not going to work here, but on the app on the phone, it will show that. If for some reason they can't scan, they can check in manually. So they can select their office and space. And again, these lists are pre-filled. So if I go to Paris, it will show me the spaces just for Paris. And then check in manually there. And you can also add in a number of guests as well if they are bringing people to the office with them. And lastly, at the top, they can pre-book spaces. So again, if they need to manage spaces, they can book them ahead of time. It'll show a list of all of their spaces that they have here. I don't have any yet, so I'll go ahead and book some. Again, I'm going to choose which office and space I want, and then the date range. So I'll say starting tomorrow and going through Thursday. 8 to 6. That's fine. You can set the time, total number of people. So if you have guests, again, you can bump that up. And if you have any notes for someone who needs to review this, like if you have an important client meeting or a reason that you need to be in the office, it may be good to have users include that here. And when you request the booking, as long as there is space, you'll automatically be approved. If there is no space left, you'll be put in a waiting list. And again, it will be up to the office managers to approve or deny things. And I can see this here. I can come in and edit or delete my request. Okay, so again, we'll see all of my bookings here and I'll be able to see updates on the status. I will also receive an email, a push notification, or an SMS, again, based on my preferences to show if a booking's been approved or denied, or if I'm in a wait list. The news section, again, this is pretty standard for most of you who have used Fliplet apps before, with a couple of exceptions. So we have news, which is based on a data source. You can also just use an RSS feed, but one of the nice things about this is people can subscribe or mute notifications for specific news items. They can like, they can bookmark, they can comment, and they can also share. So this share will just generate a link for them to share on social media or other platforms. The COVID-19 guidance, this is again pretty basic information that we've included, very general. You may want to make this more specific, but it's just static text content to help people at the office. And then the questions screen, again, this is a public forum. It's meant for anyone to be able to ask. So I can see this plus button and I can ask a new question. But I can also look through existing questions or potentially help answer them by leaving a comment on them. Again, I've already shown my bookings. Let me go to the home page here. Yep, next is the directory. So again, I have my status here. I'm listed up in the left. I can update my information, but I can see all of my status based on those icons. And I can see everyone else in the office. So I can search for specific people. I can filter by, this should default to my specific office, but I can filter that out as well for specific departments. And I can see the status for the week for each user. And potentially I can, reach out and contact them if I need them to work from home because I work next to them and I have an important client meeting. The office status, again, should anyone be traveling or they want to see the status of their office, you'll be able to see here, you have closed, open, limited. If you select a date here, you'll be able to see the specific values for different spaces and whether they're open or not. So let me go to Paris here. So Paris has these two different spaces, the breakout area and the desks. This is how many spaces there are in each and how many are open. And then I can book for these specific spaces. So I can really easily see, you know what, this one's almost full. I need to make sure I book it ahead of time. So let me go book that now. And again, when I make a booking, it's going to pre-fill that office and space I selected. I choose the days I want to be there, the time, if there's going to be any other guests. Otherwise, I'll leave that at 1, and any notes. Okay. Report an issue. So I mentioned this during the slides. Basically, we have different issue types. You can fully customize this, but we have things like someone has COVID symptoms or hygiene or office environment. Maybe the soap wasn't filled in a specific area of the Paris office, so I can select Paris, select the area, and say refill soap. And then that's going to be submitted specifically to the office manager for Paris, so they can address that as necessary. The settings, so again, this is kind of profile information, but it's also in regards to the notifications. You can see this app is not set up to have push notifications. That's because the app isn't published yet. You will need to make sure that you set up push notifications, whether you're on a public app or if you're going to be on your enterprise app store. If you want to have push notifications, you'll have to set that up through Apple and Google. The rest of the information, if they check SMS, the cell phone number will have to be filled in. And again, I can set a default for my office and space to just make it easier when I'm booking things that those values are pre-filled. And last but not least, we do have in-app notifications. So this is nice. In addition to push notifications, which can be seen outside the app, those are, however, temporary. In-app notifications will show you a full list and a history of all of the notifications that have been sent. So if people need to look through that history, they can see that here. Okay. Again, if there's any questions about this so far, please ask in chat and we will get to that shortly. But that pretty much does it for my section of the live demo. So I will swap it over to Joe, who will present now.
Great, thanks, Brett. I'm just going to share my screen and we'll go back over and take a look at a couple of slides before we do another set of live demo. So Brett has just showed us exactly kind of what the app does and how it works. What we're now going to look at is a bit more of the kind of practical items that you need to do to get the app set up. So we're going to first start with taking a look at the recommended steps for setup. And so there's a few different ways that you can get started with this at the moment. So as Brett kind of mentioned, some of the features we're still working on. However, within a couple of days, everything should be finished and you will be able to create a new app using this new templates. If you are super keen to get started with this as soon as possible, then send your customer success person a note and they're more than happy to give you a version of the template as it is at the moment. But once you've got a first version of the template, these are the different steps that you can go through to get your app set up. So the first thing that you need to do is create a new app using our templates and decide on what features you want. What I would suggest you do is have a look through them, just like Brett did now when he did the demo on each screen, and decide if there's anything that you don't necessarily need for your templates or for your app. The way that we have built up the template is that we've included a lot of different features, which we assume that depending on your use case, there might be some things that you will turn on and some that you will turn off. That's absolutely fine. What we recommend doing is just kind of going through them and noting down anything that you maybe don't need. The second thing that you can do, and you can start doing this today if you want to get started, is actually collating all of the data using our Excel templates. And so what we've done to kind of get you started and basically allow you to build up this template as soon as possible is we've given you a couple of Excel templates where you can fill in all of the data that the app needs. This is for all of the office information, this is for all of the spaces, for staff, and then optionally for products if you're including that in the app. Now, the reason why we suggest using the Excel templates, and we're going to take a look at them in a second, is because you can kind of start just noting down all of the different content that you want to have in the app. And as soon as you have it ready, you can just kind of bulk upload that into the app, and then you have all of the data in there that is yours, and the app will be customized within just kind of 5 minutes initially. So once you have collated the data, you'll do kind of the initial data upload, which we are going to run through this in a second and show you how it works. After you get your data in there, there might be some configuration changes that you need to do on a screen-by-screen basis, depending on the data that you're uploading. If there's anything that maybe you don't need, maybe there's some additional sets of data that you've included in for the staff information, for example, then there might be some configuration changes that you need to do within the studio. And then you obviously have to apply your branding, make sure that you're kind of customizing the template to look like your company kind of branding, and then you can move quickly into kind of preview and testing stages, where we definitely suggest that you take some time testing the different kind of user role. Again, we're going to kind of take a look at this in a second, so we can really run through how you can set up different user roles and how you can test them. And after this stage, I would say the kind of purpose is that you should really only be using the app itself and the office manager, the catering manager, and the admin manager kind of functionality to add or edit any data kind of after the initial upload. And again, we'll kind of run through this when we do more of the live demos so you understand the process and how it works. And so on the kind of back of that, we're just going to tell you kind of what our template comes with, because our template comes with some preset information that's kind of loaded in there already. Some of it, obviously, you can kind of just take to get started. We've put some content example in there based on the CDC and the UK government advice and guidance, but you can take that out and replace it with whatever is relevant for your offices and your locations. We will also be providing you guys with preparing, merging, or creating new apps within this template. So as Brett mentioned, the intention is very much you can either use the whole template and create a new app to publish, or you can kind of pick and choose different features that you want and maybe put them into an existing app. This is how we're currently working with another couple of clients that have already kind of cherry-picked some of these features that are a bit later on in the stage, and they've put them into existing apps and already kind of have them somewhat working. We will also give you assistance on training staff on how to use it. We can also kind of give specific office managers and catering staff training so they kind of understand their roles and how to use it. And we'll give you assistance when it comes to kind of launching the app and also encouraging users to engage with it. And then, of course, as we've already mentioned, we'll be giving you access to these spreadsheet templates, which just means that you can accelerate the loading of the data and get it set up as quickly as possible. And so before we kind of move in and look at the kind of user specific roles, this is just kind of giving you a bit of an update on how we recommend that you manage the app and the contents. So you will have somebody kind of managing the app within the Flipit Studio who is your app builder and app maintainer. Now, this person needs to have access to the Flipit Studio where they're kind of building out the app and making all of the different configuration changes. This is also the person that obviously kind of first of all creates the templates. But then the way it works is that your users will get access to the app using either a web app and a URL, or your app live on iOS or Android devices. Now, this can obviously go out to public app store if it's a public facing app, but probably it's more likely there's going to be an internal facing app. So kind of through either your MDM solution, or if you're using Apple Business Manager to do that. And then we also have kind of a secondary level of users, which is your office manager and your catering managers and your admin users of the app. Now, they're users that will be able to manage content in the app directly from within the app. And we're going to run through this more in detail in a second. But what this means is you can have different editors editing different sections of the app. I can have an office manager 1, which is managing the London offices. I can have an office manager 2, which is managing the New York offices. And I can have an office manager 3 managing the Tokyo office. Now, one of the really good things about allowing people to manage content directly from the app itself is that you don't have to give them access to Flipper Studio. They don't need to have a studio account. They don't have to learn how to use the studio tool. They can very much use the app like a content management system. And we'll take a look at how this looks in a second, but it's something that a lot of users will be familiar with from using other kind of online systems. Oh, I think we missed a slide. So here we go for the office manager role. So just to going in a bit more in detail, exactly what different kinds of managers and users and editors can do. All of the items that we're kind of mentioning here are things that users can do from within the app itself. As I mentioned, they don't have to have access to the Flipper Studio to be able to do this. So the office manager will be able to update the status and guidance for an office. They'll also be able to set up and manage spaces within each office. So this means, they can really kind of set out, which floors should be open, where do we want our breakout spaces or meeting rooms and so on. They will also be able to manage their capacity, and we'll show you in a second how you can actually update the capacity, because it's a very kind of quick thing to do using the app. So it's a very simple system to use. The office managers will also be the ones kind of printing the QR codes for the check-in and the checkout, which must be placed at the entrance of each space. They will also be able to answer questions from staff regarding that office. So when we had the FAQ section, office managers will be able to respond to them and reply to people from within the app itself. Office managers can also manage office bookings. They can also update them. So if for some reason they've noticed that John Smith has booked a space for London tomorrow, but actually Carol needs to come in, they can kind of manage this from the office manager section, and they can then make edits and try to kind of make sure that whoever actually needs an office space is the correct one and gets to come in on their selected day where they need to. This is also why in the app, you remember Brett showed that there's a section where you can add notes with your booking, which is also just something that the office manager can use to then make a decision as to who should be able to come in on what specific day. The office manager can also update the office use guidelines, which is something that they can do on an office per office base, but not necessarily on a space by space base. So remember, offices are kind of, one office can have multiple spaces, and it's then the office itself rather than individual spaces that has the guidelines. The office managers will also be able to monitor usage to see, the number of people that are coming in on each day, how the bookings are going, and how it's kind of tracking with their capacity. They will also be able to monitor the staff's health and status data, and also notify staff if they should say self-isolate. So if somebody who's been sitting on floor 2 of the London office, if they say that they've had COVID symptoms, then the office manager will be able to see who else has been on that floor during the same day, and they can then ask them to isolate. Optionally, the office manager can also create and maintain checklists or other features via the studio. So these are just kind of other kind of admin functionality that you can do from within the Flipper Studio itself, not necessarily the app on your device. So moving on to the catering managing role, the catering manager role, again, all of these things is manageable from within the app itself. So when you have your kind of products or listed in the app, the catering manager will be able to add or edit the product information. So things like the different products, the pricing, availability, and so on, they can manage all of that from within the app. They will also be able to view any orders that's coming in. They will also be able to edit any orders. So in case something has gone out of capacity, then they can kind of make amends to orders and let users know that, you know, this being kind of maybe a replacement or this a change. They can then kind of communicate that to the user through the app. And they will also be able to monitor the users and also kind of assess, you know, what's being ordered and what isn't, and then kind of manage that directly from within the app. And after the catering manager role, we have the admin user. Now, the admin user, some items they will be able to edit from within the app, and some of them they would need access to within the kind of Flipit Studio to edit. So the admin user will have all of the Office Manager functionality. They will also have all of the catering managed functionality. So the admin user, if you think about it, is more kind of like being able to edit everything within the app, whereas the Office Manager and Catering Manager are more just specifically responsible for their sections of the app, right? Then we also have the admin user being able to actually make configuration and design changes on the whole app as a whole, which they would do within the studio. The admin user would also be able to manage staff information and optionally login information depending on if you're using SSO or if you're using one of the kind of Fliplet login functionalities. And that's generally it as an overview of kind of how you should be setting it up and how you can kind of manage the different sections. Now we're going to move back into the studio and do a bit of a live demo. Where we're going to be looking at how you can kind of rapidly upload your data using the kind of spreadsheet upload system that I've mentioned. We're going to look at how you actually upload this and then use the app itself to tweak this. And we're going to show you how to kind of test the different user permissions. So I'm going to just move out of the slides and we're going to start by looking at our Excel template. So the first thing I actually want to show you is if you don't know how to get access to this, once the template is live in Fliplet, we have built in a couple of sample screens, which you can see here. We've got a couple of screens called instructions. So if you ever need help kind of setting anything up within the app itself, if you click on either the instructions, which is return to Office app, it will just have some general instructions on how you can edit the template itself. But we also have another screen called instructions, how to load data. And so what you can do first of all, just to get access to our kind of Excel template, is click this link here and it gives you access to a Google Sheets version of the data, which you can then download to use in Excel or you can use it in Google Sheets depending on the system that you prefer. Now, let's say I've already done this and I've created my version of the templates here. I'm going to go in here, and then the way that this works is we've got a little bit of instructions here, but then we've got one tab set up for staff, for offices, for spaces, and then optionally you can fill in the products part as well if you want to kind of keep the canteens open and you want to allow people to use that functionality. Now let's kind of look more in detail what this actually means. So if we look at the staff section first of all, the intentions with giving you access to these templates is that you can start collating this data now and then take a couple of days, fill all of this in with the correct data, and then you just bulk load that up in Studio, and that actually means that most of the content will be customized for your use straight away. Some features within the app itself is relying on you having a certain set of data in there, which is why we're giving you access to this template so that you know exactly what is required and what's optional and where you can have a bit more space to decide what data you want to include. So it's important when you're kind of doing this that you're taking a look at what we've kind of said here. So if we just kind of go through this top to bottom, we see in column 1, we've got the different field names. So this is kind of the column names and the field names as they would be called within the data source in Flippy Studio. We've got things like the email, admin, user role, first name, last name, and so on, since this is a staff list. This can also be used as the login information if you're using one of the Fliplet login components. Then what we have here is a bit of a description, just kind of explaining to you the type of data that you need to include. So for the user role, for example, because we have a few different options for the user roles, and it's important that these are added in the correct way. We've given you the different options here so you know what you should be filling in. So for the user role, your options would be keep it blank if it's just a standard user, admin, office manager, or catering. And then you can just fill this out here, and then when you upload that into Studio, you know that the user roles will be correct because you've just used our templates. We're also kind of telling you here on row 3 what is required and what is recommended or optional. Now, when it says required, it means that you must include this piece of data, otherwise there might be some functionality not working. Now, if we take email, for example, email is the main way that the user will recognize who you are within the app. So whenever you have anything that is customized per your login, so for example, you can book spaces and you can see all of your bookings. Unless we have an email here to basically compare who the logged in user is and the specific bookings, that feature won't work, which is why emails are required. However, we're not really using name, first name or last name as anything to kind of see who the user is. We're not kind of using that in any way to load specific information. However, because you're going to have a directory in the app, we strongly recommend that you keep these because you want to be able to list people by their name. So that's why this one is required, but these ones are only recommended. And then some of these are optional because it's completely optional. If you want to include them, you could also include other kind of optional pieces of information if you wanted to. So this is specifically what we have for staff. You can also see sometimes we've said, you know, you need to leave things blank. So just kind of take a look at the different descriptions to figure out exactly what kind of data that we want in here. Each of these examples also comes with one example entry, so you can take a look at what that looks like. So that's the item we have for staff. If we move over to quickly look at the offices, you can see this is set up the same, but it only has a few items that are actually required and some that are optional or recommended only. Now, the way that this works, again, you see the different columns in here and you see what is required and some sample data in here. What I would recommend doing is to set up your offices just like this. And then you can kind of upload that into Studio and it will automatically kind of populate your office information. Once you have done an initial set of uploads using this spreadsheet system, then you would only be using the app to edit the data later on, because if the structure of the data changes, again, it's very sensitive, so that might actually break some of the functionality. So if we quickly also just look at the spaces, you can see the spaces data source is actually quite short comparison to the other ones. And you only have to really fill in the name and the office that it's matching to. So one thing to note here, and this is why I want to show you the office and the spaces one, because the office, you need to upload the name of the office itself. But then when it comes to the spaces, we need to just note down what is the name of the office, because that's how we can match up how many spaces you have for each of the office. So we know here that the New York office has 2 spaces at the moment and the London office only has 1. And then these is how many people are allowed to come in on a daily basis. So this is how our template works. Now, what I've done already to kind of get us started so we can kind of do a bit of a test in Studio is I've created a version of my staff data. So what I'm going to do here to quickly get this into my app is actually take the data that I've uploaded, and I'm just going to copy all of this. Now we're going to go into the Flippy Studio, and we're actually going to open up our data source, and we're just going to replace whatever's in there at the moment with our new data. The way that this works is I'm going to click on to open the data sources. You can see here we've got a staff data source, and I can see what's in here at the moment. Now, the quickest way to replace the data is actually to highlight everything and just remove everything. What I can also do, because I can see I didn't pick everything, I'm just going to highlight it and remove it. Now that I've removed everything, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place my cursor in the first row and just paste. So as you can see, this has already put my data in here, and I can see my emails, passwords, admin, and everything else. I can just click save, and then you have your new version of the data directly populated in the app. So that is how you can quickly use the template to populate all of your data, and then you quickly come into the studio to just replace what's already there. Now, I'm not going to say this at the moment, because what we're going to do is we're actually going to look at how, once you've gotten your first set of data in here, you can use the app itself to update and manage it going forward. So the way that it works is, once you've done your first initial set of uploads, if we go into preview, you will be able to use the app to actually kind of edit and manage all of this data. What I'm going to do first of all, just to show you, is log in using my admin user. And once I've logged in, it will take me to the menu. And so at the moment, what I generally recommend is, if you're kind of editing the app, it might be easier to do it using the desktop version, just because the window is bigger, and depending on how much information you're editing and managing, it's generally just easier to do it in a bigger window. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move into the web mode, and you can see here we have some specific admin features, we have some specific office manager features, and we've got some specific catering features. Now, I'm not going to show you all of these because they work all on a very similar kind of basis. So I'm just going to show you a couple so you understand the process. So if we actually start with, I think, the most relevant one, which is how you can manage your offices and spaces. I'm going to click into this button, and it will take me into our offices screen that we've seen before. Now, because I am an office manager or an admin, I will have this plus button here, which means that I can add new offices to this list. If I click the plus button, it will load up one of our forms where I can give my office a name. I can set the status, so this is open, closed, or fully opened. I can optionally add some notes. I can select who is my office manager. I can add an image if I wanted to for the city cover. I add an address, which is required, but everything else, it's just optional. So what you do is you fill this in, and once you've saved it, automatically a new office will be added in your office list. So that's step one for adding an office. Now, once you've added an office, what you need to do is you need to set up the spaces for that office. The way that the spaces works is, if I click on any of these entries, so let's click Paris. Because I am an office manager and admin, I see this extra button here. It's called Manage Spaces. So what I can actually do to set up more spaces here for Paris, I can click this button, and it will take me to another screen, which again just shows me the different options. So if I wanted to edit anything that's already in the app, I can click on it, and I can click edit, or I can delete spaces if I wanted to. If I click edit, it actually takes me to another form, which allows me to just set the name of the office. And remember, this is how we're linking the correct office with the correct space. So this is important, that this is exactly the same as the name of your office. Then we've got the name of the space itself. So this can be level 11, breakout area. This could also be called floor 2 or meeting room 26, whatever it is that you guys want to call them. And then you add your capacity. So at the moment we've set this to 15, but let's say actually capacity has increased slightly in the last day. I can change this to 20 if I want to. I can then click submit and save, and I can go back, and it should have been updated in my list. You can see here it now has 20 spaces. So that's how you can edit a current space, but also if you click the plus, just like we did for the office, I can then add in a new space. Again, the only thing you need to do here is add in the name of the office. So if this is for Paris, I can do that. If this is a new floor, I can add a floor 2. I can set my capacity, maybe this is a smaller floor, and I can click submit. If I then go back, we should have a new floor for Paris. So this is how we can manage the different office spaces and the offices themselves. As you can see, it's really kind of quick to do, and it's really meant to work for you guys on a flexible level. And just things like updating the capacity itself when any of the guidance changes should be just a 1-minute job for the office manager. So that's how you can manage the offices and the spaces. If we just quickly go back to the menu, what you can also do from within the app itself is manage actually the booking requests. So if I click manage booking requests, again, you'll see a very kind of similar thing where we've got a list of the different office requests. I can either add a new booking if I wanted to do this manually for anyone. I can also, if I wanted to, edit anybody's booking if I click open and then select edit. So all of the kind of management features, so anything that the office manager can do, anything that the catering manager can do, and anything that the admin can do works on exactly the same kind of basis. I can also here add a guest booking if I wanted to. So that's generally how you can use the app to kind of manage the different offices and spaces, and this is how you can view the booking requests and manage them. Now, another quick thing to note, and it's more about kind of the user roles, what you can do to kind of manage them from within the app and test them is obviously now we have logged in as our admin user, which if I click on this button here, it will take me to a screen that shows me the different users. Now, what I can actually do here is I can tap to view and I can see that, you know, this is an admin user, that's great. If I wanted to edit anybody's level of access, what I would do is I would tap, I edit, and then I set up the user information. So you can see here the different user roles, and it's as easy as kind of switching this to have an office manager, catering, or admin. You can also then edit whatever other information that you might want to have for that specific user, or that specific staff entry within your directory. You can also set up new people with new roles if you click on the plus button, and then you can kind of add them in. What I would recommend doing is when you're kind of setting up the different user roles in the Fliplet Studio, when you're kind of building this up, and this is something that the app builder, the admin will do kind of initially, is set up the different users and just test their login within the studio. The way that you do this, if I expand this area, I have now logged in as an admin, which means that if I go back to the login, it will try to redirect me again because it's telling me I already have a valid login. If you wanted to test the different user roles and access levels, what you would do is you would create different users with the different roles. And then to kind of test the different logins, what you do is you click the reset preview buttons, which just means that the button will forget that you have logged in, and it just allows you to then log in again to test the different users that you have set up with either an admin, an office manager, but also the catering role if you have one. And I think that's everything that we have to show you kind of specifically for the demo on how to kind of configure the app. I'm quickly going to go back to the presentation, because there's just another couple of quick slides that we want to run through. And so how do you now actually get started? Once you kind of have watch this webinar, what you need to do next is really confirm which features that you'd like to start using. As I mentioned, the template itself, it will go live for everyone within a couple of days on the system. If you quite urgently need to get started, what I would recommend you start straight away with is collecting the content, including, you know, COVID-19 regulations for each offices, all of the kind of office and staff information, which you can use are kind of Excel templates to populate them. As I mentioned, even if the template isn't live yet, if you want to get access to this, just email me or Brett, and we can give you access to a version of the spreadsheets. So you can start filling this in. You can also start gathering your canteen menus if you want to include that section of the app. You can also get together any FAQs that you might want to have preset and preloaded in there, and any other kind of reference information that you might want. We would also recommend that you start engaging the office manager user already now, so you can get their feedback and you can kind of start educating them on how this will work from kind of a management perspective as well. And I think that's mainly it. I think at this point we're going to open it up for questions. Brett, has there been any questions coming in?
Yes, quite a few. Kind of a two-part question. Do you have the ability to restrict how far out a booking can be secured? And what was the other part of this? Is there a specific time frame you can set for the bookings?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think the way it works at the moment is the initial template is set so the user can book any kind of time frame and any days that they want. However, it is definitely possible to kind of make certain restrictions on it. When we kind of built out the template, I think we tried to make it as straightforward and simple as possible. And we tried to make it so that you guys wouldn't have to spend a lot of time educating the user on how they would use it. So we've tried to mimic a booking functionality that people are mostly kind of used with, where you just select your date and that's it. Something that we are talking to other clients and users about who are already actually kind of trialing the app is maybe allowing users to book on a week by week basis, so that people can only book kind of within a 1 week at a time, so that they can't book too far in advance. So that would be possible. We would just have to kind of understand the scenario and maybe work with you guys to help you make that change.
Okay, and then there's questions about having floor plans or maps or some kind of guidance through the office in the app.
Yeah, so we haven't put that necessarily within our templates, but we do have a feature in Fliplet that we call an interactive floor plan. What this means is that you can definitely upload your floor plans. You just need to have them as a JPEG or a PNG. Upload them to the Fliplet Studio, and you can then mark certain sections of the office, and that can be all interactive. What another idea to kind of use interactive floor plan is that you could also potentially mark off, are there any sections that are like no-go areas and they're completely closed off? Whereas maybe there are some sections that are, open and green, so you can kind of place your markers, put different color coding on there to kind of make it clear to the user how they should be using it. That feature as well offers like a search functionality. So if you wanted to allow people to search for like specific areas, they can do that.
Yeah, and also on the offices, we do have, you can potentially add links to Google Maps, so people can just open that in their app if they are going to a new office or if it's a guest or someone. And you can also add information in the data source that Joe showed about the office, and just make sure that it displays in the list view that, or the detail view about an office. If there are further details, people need to enter or exit through specific doors, you can put all of that into the data source and just display that in the list. And then in terms of uploading, people wanted to know about potential alternatives for if you can't do a spreadsheet. Is there any way to use Active Directory and other things?
Yeah, that's a good point. And so it's definitely possible. And I think this is probably more relating to the staff data rather than the offices and the spaces. But it is definitely possible to get data from any of your internal systems, such as Active Directory, and put them into the data source manager that we showed you. If you're interested in learning more about integration options, then we do have documentation about how that works on our developer sites. But yes, it would be possible. I would say that if anybody wants more information about integrating with any of your current systems, then reach out to your customer success representative and we can talk you through the specifics about that specific system that you have.
And then the last question, which might be slightly related to that, is encrypting personal data. So if you are using the integration system Joe mentioned, as you push stuff into the app, you can encrypt it. But you can also encrypt the data in the Fliplet data sources. Again, that's just a little bit of custom code, so it's probably best to reach out for Joe and I if you do want to do any encryption about personal data or health data. And I think that's probably about it.
Okay, perfect. That's great. And then just before we finish off, guys, I just wanted to say that we have another couple of few upcoming webinars coming up soon, which hopefully some of you will find useful. Brett and I specifically are hosting a webinar about the new code library that we launched recently. And it's all about how you can kind of advance and enhance your apps using some very simple kind of custom features that we're giving you access to. This is going to happen on the 11th of June at 4 p.m. UK time and 11 a.m. Eastern time. So feel free to sign up for that. You can see the URL at the bottom is fliplet.com/webinars. So please do go through that URL and sign up for those webinars. But that's everything. Thank you everyone for watching. As I mentioned, we will be launching this template live for everyone within the next few days, but if somebody needs this urgently, please reach out to me and Brett, and we're more happy to give you kind of a version of the template as we have it at the moment, and you can get started.